Lesson 5, the Pythagorean Theorem. Let's talk about some vocabulary when we're dealing with the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay. When we're talking about the Pythagorean Theorem, we're always dealing with right triangles. Okay. That's the only type of triangle that we can use. It doesn't work on acute or obtuse. It has to be a right triangle. So in this drawing right here, okay, of your right triangle, will you go ahead and put your box like it is here in the picture? Go ahead and put your box in there so that it denotes that it is a right triangle. Okay. And let's look at some other vocabulary here. We have segment BC and segment AC. These two segments that form the right angle, these are called legs. Okay. This line AB right here, it's the longest segment of the triangle. This is called the hypotenuse. Okay. These are vocabulary words that you're going to need to know, so make sure you have them written in your notes. What they want you to do here is to actually take a ruler and measure these lengths. Okay, I know most of you probably don't have a ruler at home, so I will go ahead and give those to you. BC, one of the legs, is 6 centimeters. CA, the other leg, right here, is 8 centimeters. What do you think AB would be? Okay, is it going to be longer than these two? Is it going to be shorter? It's 10 centimeters. Your hypotenuse has to be longer than your legs. If it's not, it's not going to work, or it's not the hypotenuse and you have the wrong side. Again, your legs are the two sides that make up the right triangle. Your hypotenuse is across, is opposite of the right angle, and it's your longest side. It's kind of like your diagonal. So let's talk about the Pythagorean theorem then. Now that we know some vocabulary that will help us. The Pythagorean theorem describes the relationship between the lengths of the legs and the hypotenuse for any right triangle. Okay, again, it has to be a right triangle in order for it to work. Okay? That's important. What the Pythagorean theorem is, it helps us find a missing length of a right triangle, of a side. Okay? And it states a squared, so if you take this leg, this length, and you square it, and you take this length and you square it, add them together, it's going to give you this length squared. And that's how we get the formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are your legs and c is your hypotenuse. Okay? So let's look at an example here. Write an equation that you could use to find the length of the missing side of each right triangle. Then find the missing length. Okay? Now again, we talked about if we're working in geometry, you always start with an equation. So here's your equation. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. There's your Pythagorean theorem. Then let's plug in what we know. Okay, they give us the two legs. They give us a and b. So, and it doesn't matter which one's a and which one's b, as long as they're the legs. Okay? So they have a as being 12, b as being 9. So 12 squared is 144. 9 squared is 81. After we square them, we add them up, and we get 225. Our goal is to get c by itself. So if you look here, we have c squared. We don't want c squared. We have to get c. So the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. And the square root of 225, 15. So this missing length right here is 15. Okay? And then that makes sense. It has to be larger than 9 and 12. Okay? Let's look at another example. In this example, we're missing a leg, okay, not the hypotenuse, as in the previous example. Okay? So again, we're going to start off with our equation, and then we're going to plug in what we know. Okay? We know that A is 8, and we know that the hypotenuse, or C, is 24. So then once we plug that in, our next step is to go ahead and square. So 8 squared is 64, and 24 squared is 576. And again, that 24 is in the C spot. That is this right here. That's your hypotenuse. So that's why it's over here with the C. Then we do our we solve a basic equation to get rid of 64, positive 64, we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. So 576 minus 64 is 512. And again, we want b by itself. So the opposite of squaring something is to take the square root of it. And the square root of 512 is 22.6. Okay? And again, that makes sense because 22.6 is smaller than 24. Okay? Your legs have to be smaller than the hypotenuse. So let's try a couple here. Let's look at your got it problems. Let's work out letter A together, and then I'll let you try B and C on your own. Okay? So again, we're going to start with our equation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay? Now let's plug in what we know. In this problem, they give us the two legs. They give us A and B. So make one A and make one B. It doesn't matter which is which. Okay? So we have 24 squared plus 18 squared is going to be C squared. We don't know what C is. That's our goal, to find out what our hypotenuse is. So after we do this, we have to square it first. Remember, order of operations, exponents come first. So 24 squared plus 18 squared. Okay, 24 squared is 576. 18 squared is 324. Now we can go ahead and add them together, and we get 900. Okay, but 900 is not our answer. We still have to get C by itself. So what we need to do is we need to take the square root of 900, and the square root of 900 is 30. So let's see if our answer makes sense. Does it make sense if our hypotenuse is 30? Oh yes, it does, because it has to be the longest side, and it's just a little bit longer than 24 and 18. If we kept 900, that doesn't make sense. Okay. All right, so pause the video right now, and I want you to try B and C on your own. Okay, let's see how you did. Start with a formula, and let's plug in what you know. Okay. Now notice this time they're having you solve for a leg. They didn't give you B. So B stays B squared. Next, do your exponents. Okay. Then to get B squared by itself, we have to subtract 9 from both sides. So 64 minus 9 is 55. Okay. Then we have to take 55, and we have to take the square root of it. Okay. So we should be taking the square root of 55, which is 7.4. Okay? And that makes sense. 7.4 is smaller than our hypotenuse, which is what we want. Okay? And let's take a look at C. Here you're missing a leg as well. You're missing A. Okay? So let's see how you did on that one. Did you get 10.5? Okay, it's okay if you get decimals. Just make sure you round it to the correct, whatever the directions ask you to. 17 squared is your B. Your hypotenuse is 20. It's opposite. Okay? It is opposite the right angle. So 20 is your C, your hypotenuse, okay? Just make sure at the end, 111 is not your answer. That doesn't make sense. Take the square root of it and you get 10.5. So now that you know how to do the Pythagorean theorem, or you knew how to do it, it was review, let's talk about its converse. A converse in math just means the reverse of a theorem. We know that the Pythagorean theorem states if a triangle is a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, we can reverse that and we can say if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then the triangle has to be a right triangle. So what we can do with this is they can give us 3 lengths, and we can use those lengths to decide if the triangle is a right triangle or not. Okay? For example, the measure of 3 sides of a triangle are 5 inches, 12 inches, and 13 inches. Determine whether the triangle is a right triangle. So what we can do is we can use the Pythagorean theorem right here, and we can plug in what we know. They tell us the sides are 5 inches, 12 inches, and 13 inches. Now the reason the 13 is over here is because it's the longest side. It's the hypotenuse. So if we do our squaring, we get 25 plus 144 equals 169. 13 squared equals 169. Since both sides end up equaling each other, it's a true statement. Therefore, the triangle is a right triangle. Okay? Why don't you pause the video now and try these two got it problems. Okay, so let's take a look here. We have 36 miles, 48 miles, and 60 miles. They want to know, does this form a right triangle? Well, let's start with the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, we have to decide what's A, what's B, and what's C. Well, for A and B it doesn't matter, but C it does. C has to be your biggest side, your largest side, which is going to be 60. Okay, so if we square those, 36 squared and 48 squared, give us those numbers. If we add 1,296 plus 2,304, we get 3,600. And 60 squared is 3,600. So our answer here is yes, it is a right triangle. Okay? These lengths form a right triangle. Now if you look at this side right here, they give us 4 feet, 7 feet, and 5 feet. So again, start with your Pythagorean Theorem. A and B, it doesn't matter, but C has to be 7 because it is your largest length. Okay? We do our squares. We get 16 plus 25. If 16 plus 25 equals 49, it's a right triangle. If it doesn't, it's not a right triangle. So 16 plus 25 is 41. 41 does not equal 49, so no, it's not a right triangle. Okay? And that's what the converse of the Pythagorean Theorem does. It allows us to work backwards to see, do we have a right triangle? Okay? So right now, this is the end. This is a short lesson. What I want you to do is do the guided practice problems and come in tomorrow with those done so that we are ready to go on and try some harder practice problems, okay?